Hello and welcome to the Guitar Hang Podcast. I'm your host, John Stancorb. Today we delve into the illustrious career of Chris Leuzinger. You might recognize Chris from his extraordinary journey, including his collaborations with country music icon Garth Brooks, as well as renowned artists like Dobie Gray, Eddie Rabbitt, Buffy Sainte-Marie, and Crystal Gale. Chris's name is synonymous with exceptional guitar artistry, and he's left an indelible mark in the world of country music and beyond. We're in for an exclusive journey through his musical universe, exploring his career, memorable experiences, and what fuels his unyielding passion for the guitar. Please make sure you hit the subscribe button below and ring the bell for notifications. And now, let's hang with Chris Leuzinger. Did you just wrap up a Vegas run, or you still have some more shows?
No, we're still out here. We've got we did 3 shows last week, and we've got 6 more to do in the next 2 weeks before we finish out the year.
Yeah, it's nice to not have the travel associated with the shows, be able to.
Yeah, it sure is. Just being in one place and having your rig sound the same every night, and the crew loves it. They don't have to change things and move around.
Yeah, it's one of the rewards when you have a legacy career, and you're able to do the extended runs, a residency.
Right. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It harkens back to, if you think about all the dues that you paid getting there, some of the travel gigs and some of the overnights and the load-ins and the load-outs and the flights delayed, flights canceled.
Yeah, definitely.
Pedal boards kind of messed up by American Airlines.
Yeah, definitely.
The strains and stresses.
Yeah.
Are you a St. Louis guy?
No, I grew up in South Florida.
South Florida, okay.
Yeah, but I've been in Nashville since '72, so
yeah,
it's kind of home. But I grew up in West Palm Beach, Florida.
Right, and you were probably in that period of time coming up as a guitar player. You're probably, I would suppose, you're influenced by all the blues greats: Peter Green, Clapton, Beck.
Yeah. Bloomfield was the first.
Yeah.
I had a friend of mine, I was playing cover tunes in a band, all the British Invasion songs and everything. And a good buddy of mine handed me the East West album by Paul Butterfield and said, you need to listen to this. And so I did. And then he actually turned me on to Peter Green too. He said, you need to check this out. And of course, that Hard Road album, the John Mayall album, Peter Green on it, was one of my favorites. And the Clapton album too,
Yeah.
So yeah, a lot of that was influence.
Yeah. It's a rite of passage, I guess. Those albums, Hard Road and the Beatles.
Yeah, definitely. Mm-hmm.
But in the early '70s, it was that was a great time. Coming up, hearing that, but also coincidentally, growing up in Florida. I mean, you're probably influenced by Duane Allman and
it was interesting. There was so many, like the late '60s in Florida, there was so many great venues, like especially in Miami, and there was a place called The Image, and the Blues Image was the house band there, and Mike Pinero was the guitar player in the Blues Image, and just that was pre-Iron Butterfly and all that stuff. And I mean, he was just done. I used to drive down there to watch him play all the time, and of course I saw Cream and Can Heat and all those bands down there, and it was just it was a great place to see all the live music. And then there was Wayne Cochran and the CC Riders with all the R&B stuff, and a lot of great R&B playing going on in Miami at that time too, in Fort Lauderdale. So we'd buzz down there all the time. And
I guess that would have been around a Jocko era, Wayne Cochran.
Yeah, and I saw Wayne a few times, but I didn't know who Jocko was at that point. So I didn't. He could have been playing with him or not. I didn't really know.
Yeah, a bit more subdued than what you would later find him doing with Weather Report in terms.
Right. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I don't know that he had quite fully bloomed into the personality that he became on stage, but. Yeah, and I guess there was a period of time, maybe in the early to mid '70s, where Clapton was ensconced in Miami with Tom Dowd making uh, Ocean Boulevard record and things like that.
Oh yeah. Hmm.
Yeah. Uh, when you moved to Nashville, it was obviously a wildly different thing than it is now. I'd be interested in to kind of hear what that was, how you broke into the session thing. I think you had a road gig with Eddie Rabbitt, perhaps, but I didn't know if you were doing touring and.
Yeah, I actually I never toured with Eddie, but I played on a couple of his early records.
Okay.
And but I moved to Nashville in 1972 to play with some buddies that already had a band there,
Okay.
and we started playing clubs around town, and it was a lot of fun. It was a really creative time. There was a lot of songwriters there. I mean, there was people just you go to the exit in, you see, Rodney Crowell, Guy Clark, different
Yeah.
people, really great songwriters, Towns Van Zandt, and but we our break came because we had a guy, publisher named Juan Contreras that took a liking to our band, and he started introducing us to people. And one of the people he introduced us to was Norbert Putnam, who owned Quad Studios at the time.
Oh,
And Dobie Gray had just finished cutting the Drift Away record there, and they needed a road band to back up Dobie.
yeah.
So 1973, I think it was, when Drift Away was a hit, we got
Yeah.
the gig. We're out on the road playing with him,
Yeah.
and that was a real blast. That was my first sort of big road gig. So, this all sort of came about through this guy we met, Juan Contreras, who was very helpful. And after Dobie's gig ended, the producer Norbert Putnam had been producing records on an artist named Buffy St. Marie.
Yeah.
And so they needed a band to go out with her and play. And we ended up going out with her for a good while.
Yeah.
And that was sort of how I started getting broken into just a bigger deal than playing clubs, doing some touring and going overseas and stuff like that.
Yeah. I think that Dobie Gray record would have been the first time I would have been aware of Reggie Young.
Oh yeah, yeah. And I have to say that, like I was a blues R&B player from Florida, moved to Nashville, not really knowing what to do in the studio and stuff. And I had to learn every lick Reggie played on those first two Dobie records.
Yeah.
And that was like an education. It was like going to session player college, tone, taste, where to play, where not to play, all
Yeah.
that sort of stuff,
And the way that he would go about playing it was, it seemed like it was his own take on maybe the Curtis Mayfield, Cornell Dupree
Right.
school of
Hmm.
playing,
Yep.
supporting the vocals, but in a very tasty way, double stops and just
Yeah.
volume pedal and
Yeah. And what's funny about that is when I was 16 or 17, that record I'm in Love by Wilson Pickett came out that had all that sort of playing all over it. And I played that record over and over again to hear those guitar parts. And that was Reggie,
yeah,
playing on it. And later on, when I met him and finally got the gig with Dobie and everything, was just really a thrill.
yeah,
Uh,
yeah. That's it's neat when you get to meet these players that you're exposed to on records, and you may not know them as people, and you get to know them, and
right. Definitely.
yeah, were
Definitely. Big influence for sure.
oh yeah,
Big influence. Yeah.
and yeah, this was the an interesting time as far as the tools in your arsenal would have been remarkably different than what they would have been 10 years later, and then obviously now, but I mean, I would guess that at best you might be equipped with a Tele or a Strat, maybe a Princeton Reverb.
Well,
Oh,
it was,
not a lot of not a lot
yeah,
of,
it was a little of, I was either had a pro reverb or a twin or a deluxe, I think. But when I was 19 years old, before I moved to Nashville, I moved up to New York City. And when I was up there, I managed to grab a 1952 Les Paul with the P90s.
oh wow, yeah,
And I took it to Dan Armstrong and had the trapeze removed, and I had a Tune-O-Matic and a stop tail piece put on it and had it refinished. And I actually still have that guitar, managed to hang on to it, but that was my main guitar at the time.
nice, yeah,
And then about 1975, somewhere in between Dobie and Buffy. I had a friend that sold me a 63 Strat for $250. And so that was my main then, my main two guitars then. And then finally a couple of years later, I got a 63 Telly for about $275 at O'Donnell Music. So those three were kind of my kingpins back then. And
Yeah.
it's kind of funny, I used those three guitars on a lot of the recording stuff, and especially a lot of Garth's early records. And so a few years ago, I decided to sell the Telly and the Strat, and he said he'd like them, so I sold them to him.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, and it worked out great because I can still play them. I get to play the Telly every night, and he lets me play it in the show, so
That's so
worked out good.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, the guitar that you're describing reminds me of a guitar that I might have seen Freddie King holding in an early promo photo for Hideaway.
Right, right, and on the cover of "Let's Dance Away, Hideaway,"
That's
he's
it,
playing.
yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
I see him
Mhm.
with the coif and the hair
Yeah,
down
yeah, yeah, yeah.
boot and holding that.
Hmm.
You said the trapeze bridge. I thought, oh, I think I know it. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That was really unstable though. Every time you whack the guitar hard, it would
yeah,
travel. So I
yeah.
had that changed.
I want to say that on a completely unrelated thing, I'm a big David Gilmour fan, and
Hmm.
when he cut the solo for Another Brick in the Wall, he was using a 52 gold top with P90s.
Really? Yeah, that's amazing. Yeah, they have a different voice. I have a really great 59 reissue with humbuckers that I play in the show now, but it's it's totally different voice with the P90s.
Yeah.
Sure.
Uh, it's interesting because I don't know if there's a big difference in the age between you and Garth. Is there roughly the same age?
No, it's about 10 years there.
10 years, okay.
Mhm.
Because while he was maybe taking in some of the same influence that you had, I mean,
Mhm.
obviously not he didn't pursue the guitar in the way that you did, but his influence may have had some of that stuff. But it was interesting because I don't know of any other country artist that was being influenced by Kiss
Right.
just
Mhm.
and those big,
Mhm.
stadium.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah. Yeah. Definitely. He brought that influence into his shows, which kind of totally changed the country music
Yeah,
scene. Hmm.
and I'm under the impression that you've been with him for the entire arc of that experience. So
Well, I played on the records since the very beginning. We summer fall of 1988. Well, actually August of 1988, we did his first recording session with Alan Reynolds and with our group, and 35 years later, we're still recording with him.
yeah,
But he invited me to join the touring band in 2019.
okay,
I went out and it started his regular guitar player, Gordon Kennedy, who's a fabulous guitar player and songwriter, and couldn't make one of the shows. And Garth asked me if I wanted to sub, which was kind of a great sub gig,
oh yeah, absolutely,
So I did, and it just progressed into him asking me to join the band and play with Gordon Kennedy. So we have two guitar players in the band.
oh that's awesome. Yeah, Gordon's
Mhm.
fabulous player. I
Yeah.
really enjoyed
Mhm.
this. He did some stuff with Peter Frampton on the
Oh yeah. Hmm. Hmm.
record.
But yeah, Garth's career, it's been amazing. When we went in 1988, I mean, we knew he was really good and the songs were great, but we had recorded with a lot of different people, and some of them had never seen the light of day, so you never know. And it was just, I think it was a surprise to everyone. Just a pleasant surprise when his career blew up the way it did. And
Yeah,
and it was just a real blessing. It has been a real blessing that he's like the most loyal artist, I think, in history. It's like as many of the original guys that are still playing on his records. As many of the guys that are still playing are still in his touring band that he had from 1988, 89. And
yeah,
there's a lot of the same crew people that are there also. And I just think it says a lot for his loyalty.
Yeah, it's there's something about having a family thing when you're on the road because it's it's such a grueling thing. Even if you are a legacy act that's traveling nicer than some of the other, acts that aren't quite as developed, it's still it wears on you, and you need to have people that you can count on and people that feel like family because it's a kind of a pressure cooker environment where you kind of know everybody's. You there? Can you hear me, Chris?
Have you got me now?
Yep.
I'm sorry about that.
It's all right. I was just saying it's nice to have the family vibe when you're out on the road and doing all those dates because it can be very stressful when you're if there's an adjutant in the bunch, whether it's the crew or in the band or whatever.
Definitely. Definitely. Yeah. Yeah. And everybody out here is just gets along great. There's no problems, and it's a lot of fun.
Right.
A lot of
We,
fun.
what year was your first tour? Was it 2019 when you?
Yeah, to 2019 when I went out and did a few gigs with him, and ended up doing the gig where Gordon wasn't there, which was in Eugene, Oregon.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Are you doing
And
the in-ear thing with and running wireless and all the other?
yes, yes, we do, because he wants. I think one of the cool things about his show is that he wants the band all over the stage,
Yeah.
because he can't be everywhere, and the stage is huge. I mean, on the stadium tour, the stage was gigantic and even bigger in Ireland, but it's big here at Caesars too. And so yes, we are all over the stage with in-ears and wireless.
Yeah. Is it a that had you done that prior? Had you or I tour with the Pink Floyd tribute group, so everything that we do is in our ears,
Hmm.
video and the lights, and we have click track and you know.
Right. Yep.
So, but it took a while to kind of get assimilated in that world of.
Yeah, it definitely did. And Gordon sort of warned me that the wireless is sort of a tone sucker, tone suck device. So you have to do the best you can to kind of make up for what it takes away in feel, and kind of takes away some of the low end of the sound. So I've gotten used to it now and readjusted. And the front of house man Dan Hines says everything sounds good tone wise, so I kind of trust that, even if it may not sound exactly right in my ears. I
Right.
trust that it's okay. And they at first wanted us to go out with aux boxes, and run direct. And took one of those home, and it sounded pretty good, but it just didn't feel quite right. And we discovered these things called the Box of Doom. I don't know if you've ever heard of those, but it's like a touring kind of case built. It's probably 3 feet long and 2 feet wide, and it's just got a speaker inside of it, and
Okay.
acoustic tiling around it, and you can put a mic in front of it. And
Yeah.
so it's an ISO box, and it works really well. So at least you're still moving a speaker, and
Yeah.
it gives you more of a amp feel when you're playing.
More of the immediacy of that.
Right. Yeah. Hmm.
Yeah, I think the first time I had heard somebody doing that was Alex Lifeson of Rush had referred to these things as dog houses that they had built, and essentially it was just 4x12 cabinets that were tilted that had mics on different speakers, but it was in an enclosed box just to keep
Right.
the
Hmm.
overall stage volume down,
Yeah.
which is yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah, the more sophisticated the show becomes in terms of flash pots and smoke and fog and video and
Right. Yeah.
tapes, that can, I would guess your stamina has to be pretty
Mhm.
pretty good, to be able to keep up with moving around and being
Yeah,
always on the go. How long are the
yeah, yeah, definitely.
how long are the shows that you're doing typically?
It's about 2 hours here.
Okay.
Just about exactly 2 hours.
Okay. Yeah.
Hmm.
Oh,
And sometimes a little longer if the crowd's rowdy and we do a second encore.
right. Or what would be? Do you guys encore with things that are like not necessarily like covers of songs, or they classic art? I mean, does he mix it up from?
We usually the encore we always finish the show with the dance, and then Garth will go out on his own and sing a few songs with just the guitar, which he's great at. Crowd loves that, and then we'll finish with one of his songs.
Right.
But he'll go out there and sing a couple covers, kind of sing along songs to get people singing.
Yeah.
And I mean, when we were in Ireland, I mean, it's just crazy. It's like 5 shows with 80,000 people a show. And, at the end of the night, he's out there in front of 80,000 people by himself with a guitar, and they're just as engaged as they were when the whole band was there.
Yeah.
And it's really amazing what he can kind of turn a stadium into a living room.
Yeah, because I think
When,
that's kind of where that's where his heart lies. He loves the big rock
hmm.
thing, but
Right. Hmm.
even at his core, even during those moments of the big rock thing, he's trying to connect and find a connection with the person in the very back row as much as the
Right. Hmm.
very front. So
Yeah. Hmm.
it harkens back to, I guess, his need to be a storyteller and trying.
Right. Right. And that's kind of what I feel like when you go to one of his shows, it's like you're part of the show. You're not going to like watch a band play or
Right.
perform. You're like part of the night, so it makes it fun for a lot of people.
Yeah, that's awesome. When you arrived and started doing, did you in Nashville? Did you start doing live touring stuff, or were you doing a mix of some demo dates or record dates, or?
Yeah, it was kind of a mix of things. By the time I had gotten that gig with Dobie Gray, I'd started doing, a lot of free sessions. I'd just play wherever anybody would have me. A lot of late night free after hours sessions. The engineer might have a buddy he wanted to produce some songs on or something, and then kind of worked my way into some demos. And then after a while, I got some calls from some people to do some records, and actually David Malloy was one of the first who booked me to play on some early Eddie Rabbitt sessions, and played on a couple of Eddie's hits. And then I met Alan Reynolds, who I have to just say has been my main mentor all of these years. I met him sometime in the mid 70s and started working on some of the artists. Those were some of the first records I'd worked on with. And then, he was producing Crystal Gale at the time.
Okay.
And I started playing on some of Crystal's records and actually went on the road with her for 11 years.
Oh
And,
wow.
and in the meantime, playing on her records. And then, Alan started producing Kathy Mattea and Hal Ketchum and some other artists. And finally Garth, so that Alan he was the first guy to really sort of believe in my playing and give me the time to work things out, and always had patience, and was just great. And I had about a 30-year run with him playing wonderful music before he retired.
Yeah.
And then I had my buddy Mark Stevens, who's a great guitar player, played all the acoustic work on Garth records, and he worked a lot with Kyle Lenning, who produced Randy Travis and Dan Seals, and the other guitar player, Larry Byram, ended up going on the road with Steve Winwood, and Kyle asked Mark who he wanted to play with, and Mark dropped my name in the hat. So I ended up doing a lot of acoustic work on those records with Randy Travis and Dan Seals and different people like that, and just that's it just kind of word of mouth and blossomed out
Yeah.
to to a lot of, and of course the 90s in Nashville were pretty much unbelievable. Country was king.
Yeah.
uh, uh, you know, the main
You're cutting out a little bit on me, Chris.
main format and different connections here. How's that?
Yeah.
Okay, let me try switching
The last thing I heard you say
back
was
to
the
another one.
1990s
I'm
when
so sorry about this.
that's all
Oh, there
right.
we go.
The last thing you said was in the 1990s when country was king. That was the last thing I heard you
Hmm.
say. Sorry.
Yeah, it was just really a unbelievable time. There was so many labels and so many artists and people getting signed and then there was tons of publishers and independent publishers just demoing songs all the time. So it's like nonstop session work all through the 90s. And it was just a very good time to be there, in the studio.
Yeah, and there's always the new gear that's coming out. New pickups. EMG
Hmm.
pickups seem to be somewhere in the early 90s. I think I remember Vince or Dan Huff or somebody, some of those players starting to use EMG.
Yeah. It's funny actually in my 63 Strat, when I got that gig with Crystal Gale, I went to the first like county fair and they turned on the lights and my guitar was buzzing louder than it was signal. So the next thing I did was put EMGs in it. And
Yeah,
actually the whole time I was using it to record through the 90s, it had EMGs in it.
yeah,
And they sounded great. Right before I sold it to Garth about a couple of years, I found the original pickups and put them back in there just for fun. But yeah, EMGs were happening then.
yeah. And
And
and then of course just the way records were made. When you're doing sessions when it's 2-inch tape versus Pro Tools,
yes, uh-huh.
the expedience of things goes through the roof because now you can, you don't have to, you don't have to sit there with cans on hearing the whirring of the tape
Yeah,
machine
yeah, mm-hmm.
and
Yeah.
the downtime
Mm-hmm.
to recut. Everything was just, I can imagine the 90s being a very fertile period just because you're able to be so uh, expedient with, putting down tracking dates, that sort of
Right. Yeah, definitely. And that's kind of funny. Those were the days when everybody went to the big tower racks, with tons of
Right,
preamps and you know, all this rack stuff and stick guitar recording every guitar part stereo and all the stereo chorus and delay and all that stuff. And it's kind of fun while it lasted, but now when I go back and listen to some of those records, I go, oh my gosh, I wish I
yeah.
could redo that part with the tone I have now. But
But what's funny is when you're in the moment of cutting that stuff, it's state of the art.
right.
It does, unfortunately, it leaves a thumbprint of that time period. So it will,
Hmm.
in retrospect, it will harken back to a certain. There's sounds of like chorus guitars with EMG, the clean
Right. Yeah.
stuff,
Hmm.
even the pop records that had DX7 and certain, Lynn drum stuff.
Hmm. Right. Yeah.
When you're in the moment recording that stuff, it's like, God, isn't this great? This is
Yeah.
amazing.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah, and then I listened to it a few years ago. Garth did a remix of his records, and I was like, "Can I please come back and replace some of that stereo chorus stuff?" And he's like, "Nope, I want to keep it the same."
That would
But
be interesting to hear those, things done. It would probably only, excite guitar players, but it would be interesting to hear, with because it's the best of both worlds now. I mean, you can, for expediency, use a quad cortex or some of the Kemper stuff,
right. Hmm.
but then using tube technology, the tube stuff is
Hmm.
preferred thing for guys that were around originally to have played through the tube stuff. think some of the younger guys probably have never played through the certain amps that are found as profiles inside of those modelers, but it would be interesting to hear that kind of thing recut, you know. Can you hear me, Chris? Can you hear me?
Have I got you now?
Yeah, we're good.
Have I got you, John?
Yeah.
Okay, so sorry. I'm trying my phone hotspot. Now, I think you said you're going to edit this later anyway.
Oh
Is
yeah.
that correct?
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
we'll edit all that stuff out. No
I'm
worries.
trying my phone hotspot now to see if it'll stick with us.
Yeah. Are there any newer technology things that you're excited about? Any of the, I mean, maybe for home use or for just things that if you're looking to do, you know, an isolated fly date where you just grab a small rig of some kind and
Mhm.
are you using it for stuff?
Well, not really. I mean, I've stuck by the same stuff for a long time. Uh, there's a few pedals that I just am kind of addicted to, married to,
Yeah.
and if I had to grab, I'd just take a small pedal board with a couple of those. And the two main things, I guess, are the Nobles pedals, the old ODR
Oh
ones.
yeah.
I've got
Yeah.
a few of those, and that's kind of become the first part of my signal chain, and I just stack stuff on top of that. And
Yeah.
the other stuff I just love is both the King of Tone and Prince of Tone, analog mic. Those pedals just sound so natural to me, and that's so. I mean, I could get by with like an ODR one and a King of Tone and a delayed pedal of some kind. It'd suit me fine,
Yeah.
And for years, I years ago I met Steve Carr, and I did a little exhibition thing for him, and there was a car Rambler he had there many years ago when he first got started, and that amp is just stellar. And he sold it to me, and I've had it ever since. And I mean, I have some engineers when I come in to record that love that amp more than they love my cartridge rig stuff, So that's my main go-to amp, and I've never really married to the direct stuff. I had a Kemper for a while, and I know some guys that love it, but I never could get used to it. So if I had to travel, I'd just probably request a deluxe reverb reissue and
Yeah.
a little pedal board, and
Yeah. Keep it. Yeah.
get some kind of rental amp,
Yeah.
But that car Rambler, I have to say, is just a stellar amp, and I use that for most of my home recording stuff too.
Yeah. Yeah. I remember hearing Tom Bukovac say that he had a stash of those Noble pedals. You know,
Mm-hmm.
at the time he bought a bunch up because they were just very inexpensive, but
Right.
there is something just wildly special about that. And I don't know circuit design or any of that kind of stuff, but there is
Yeah.
something magical about those pedals.
Yeah, and it's really strange. It's not just the sound, but it's a touch sensitivity. And
Yeah,
as a guitar player,
tactile thing, right?
when you feel it in your hands, it's a whole different thing. And I've even got, the reissue, the same guy that made the Nobles, next to Nordland now. And
Yeah.
it's a good pedal, but it doesn't feel the same
Yeah.
as those pedals. And gosh, who knows why they can't recreate that perfectly, or a
Yeah.
Klon Centaur perfectly, but they don't seem to be able to for some reason.
Yeah. Tom was on a video like the last few weeks with Robert Keeley, and Robert
Uh-huh.
Keeley,
Right.
his
Yeah.
offering of that.
Mm-hmm.
I
And
didn't.
those are really good.
Are they?
No, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you,
No, no.
sir.
I was just curious if you had heard about those yourself.
Yeah, I actually got one, and it's probably the closest thing I felt to that, that I really like.
It's funny
And
that
then,
you say that it's closest thing that you felt.
yeah, yes, exactly. Exactly. But there's another pedal that's really cool. It's Brian Wampler's sort of take on that, which is the bell pedal.
Yeah.
And but it's for different. I like that for like when I use my Nobles, I use them for just a tiny bit of crunch. I don't use them for the main gain. It's just to make it sound like the amp's cranked up. And Brian's bell pedal works really great with like hollow bodies and baritones and things that the Nobles might make sound too woofy.
Yeah.
His bell pedal kind of has that feel and makes them sound just nice and round without being woofy.
Yeah. And the it, it's just called the Wampler bell pedal. Is that what it?
Yeah, Belle.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a mini pedal, one of the small pedals, but it's got a real nice texture to it, and a bit of that touch sensitivity. However they get that built in there.
Yeah, but
Mhm.
I think that when you connect with certain gear that
Mhm.
has that tack, I mean, that's the hardest thing to put into a superlative as far as describing certain tones, because everybody comes up with these adjectives. It's throaty, it's meaty,
Right. Yeah.
referring to like a univibe. Oh, it's real chewy.
Right. Yeah.
The feel of it is something that's quite, hard
Mhm.
to describe.
Yes,
There's
definitely.
something about an immediacy to it
Yep,
that,
definitely.
that allows you to be as articulate as possible and get all the dynamics and the nuance.
Yep.
Uh,
Mhm.
when you were doing the early Nashville session things, was it often? Were you ever in situations where it was a challenge? You have a chart in front of you, and typically they'll run down the tune at the beginning of everybody's putting together their charts.
Mhm.
Uh, are they asking for things of you, or is there usually another guitar player on the session where you're trying to play complementary parts or coming up with? I've talked to Michael Thompson, who's a great LA studio guy,
Yeah,
and
definitely.
guys like Lyle Workman and Steve Lukather, just kind of talking about getting a chart where there's nothing on it other than just
Mhm.
maybe some basic chord symbols, and having
Right.
to come up with parts immediately. You have to have
Mhm.
your tone dialed in, but that's a given. But then,
Right.
and Tom Bukovac has also alluded to this, coming up with something from nothing.
Mhm.
Was that something that you've just found was quickly in your wheelhouse? You were able to.
Well, I guess it's something you develop after a while, and by listening to other guitar players, you know, uh, I listened. There were so many great guitar players that were in advance of me. Wayne Moss and Reggie Young and Steve Gibson and a lot of guys in Nashville. I kind of listened to what they were doing, and you know, grab a little here, grab a little there, and after a while, I sort of became able to come up with my own parts. And if they say, okay, we want electric intro on this, and all you got is 1455, you just come up, you might draw something from the melody of the song. You might draw something totally different, and different stages in Nashville, like back in the 90s, they wanted more melodic intros,
Yeah.
where you come up with an actual melody line. And then it got to where everybody wanted it to sound like you too.
Yeah.
So don't
Multiple.
play a melody on the intro, just play one note, that
Yeah.
rings through the whole thing with a lot of delay on it,
Yeah.
and or a fifths or something, and so it all changes, depending on the trends, but you kind of learn to float with what the trend is,
Yeah.
and then on sessions you have to be one of the things about being a session player is being a team player. That's the main thing.
Right.
So you may be hear a song, they run it down, and you come up with a lick that you think, man, this is going to be the lick that makes a song, and then
Right.
somebody else is over there playing a lick that you just have to be able to go, what they're doing is better than what I'm doing. I need to just let go of this and go with that. And so you learn to do that. And it's different too. Like back in the 90s, a lot of times I did a lot of double acoustic playing with Mark Castevens,
Yeah.
where it's two acoustic players in different capo positions. and you'd feed off each other. And nowadays, with country being more rockin', there's more than likely two electric players on the session.
Right.
And so, you just get in with the other guy. I mean, I love working, with Kenny Greenberg, Jeff King. I've only gotten to work with Tom a couple times in that capacity. Used to work to love with JT Cornfloss. I'm so sorry he's gone, but you get to working with certain guys. Pat Buchanan's another, and you just you don't have to say much. Like, you might hear the song and you go, well, I'll go for the high chimey stuff, and the other guy goes, okay, I'll go for the low crunchy stuff, and you just sort of, you don't have to say much. You just sort of come up with what you're going to do quickly and
Yeah.
move ahead with it.
Yeah, that's the one beautiful thing. The stories that I've heard about the session stuff, and that's exciting to me, is that kind of, it's very much a team, thing. It's like
Right.
it's not a lot of discussion. It's more intuition.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, he happened to be playing that. That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
I want to do some. I may want to lay out to make that sound even better, or I may
Mm-hmm.
have a little kernel of an idea that I can put in underneath that to help support that and shine a light on it.
Right. Mm-hmm.
It's just that interplay between what everybody on the session is, and that's what you're called for.
Right. Mm-hmm.
They call you because they like you a lot, and you may have funny stories in between, or there's a vibe that you give off, but it's just that kind of everybody's getting along, getting it done, having a good time, not making it too serious.
Yes, exactly. And nobody's just trying to shove any idea down anybody's throat. It's just it's very cordial and it's fun.
Yeah,
It's fun.
they've always spoken about being a studio guitar player as one of the more difficult pursuits in music. I mean, probably as or more difficult than getting a record deal, more difficult than being a
Mhm.
whatever, just
Mhm.
because the ecosystem is a very fragile thing in terms of, if you bring one person in there that's going to not make it go smooth, or it needs to be harmony throughout the whole thing.
Right, exactly. Yeah. Hmm.
Everybody's got to be a
Yeah.
good hang and a good player and
Mhm.
big ears.
Right, exactly. Exactly. It's all about that. And two, a lot of, when you first break in, a lot of your studio work comes from other players. If you work with a certain section and they like your playing, and the next time the guitar player's booked somewhere else, the drummer might go, hey, let's call that Chris guy who was here last time. He played well and was good. So you want to make sure and get along with everybody
Yeah.
in there.
Thing that you were alluding to with Marquez Stevens doing the really cool acoustic things is it's one thing for engineers to capture a good tone from the instrument. I mean, you guys have
Mhm.
great instruments to be dealing with, but the precision that goes along with playing acoustic guitar in the studio, in tune, intonating,
Yeah, yeah,
there's finicky stuff.
yeah. No squeaks.
Yeah, no, yeah.
Trying not to squeak or make any noises or anything.
I mean, it's a bit of hyperbole, but it's a, akin to brain surgery. There's just not
Hmm.
much error for room for margin for error. Everything
Right.
needs to be very precise, and
Mhm.
your technique has to be impeccable. That's why I always admired your playing and Mark's and Dean Park's acoustic
Oh
playing.
gosh, yeah, Dean, he's amazing.
Yeah,
Just
that's it.
go listen to On My Wedding Day on
Yeah,
the Don Henley record. I mean, that's just an amazing performance on acoustic guitar.
yeah. I think that's the one thing that always seemed to me that separated really good studio guys from the top shelf guys, was their ability to traverse between acoustic instruments and electric, but the acoustic seems like such a hard thing to nail. And then you have a guy like George Deering that was able to play bouzouki and
Oh yeah, yeah.
all that
Yeah.
kind of crazy
Hmm.
instruments. But yeah,
Yeah.
I was always inspired by the studio guys when I got started, because at the time I never could conceive of myself being in a hair metal band. I could
Mhm.
look like any of that. I liked rock, but
Mhm.
I was drawn to the studio guys because I would hear something about,
Mhm.
some rock guy might mention, oh, if you think that we're really great, you should check out, Brent Mason, Chris Lewis,
Right. Mhm.
these, those are the real guys. And you
Mhm.
start reading the liner notes and start seeing the same names over and over, and you start doing, and you go and you want to track down, oh, what solo were they playing on? And you listen to it, and just go, man, that's just, it seemed like special forces capabilities. Like the
Mhm.
that was the real, on a football team, you have the marquee kind of positions, like the wide receivers and things, but it
Right. Mhm.
seemed like you guys were like special teams, forces. they
Yeah, yeah.
very specialized in what I mean, there's a
Mhm.
wide variety of what you could do. You could go out
Mhm.
Third and Lindsay and play a gig with any band and play great stuff from jazz to rock to whatever.
Mhm.
But in the studio, it's a completely different animal.
Yes, it is. It is. And there's one element in the studio too that I should mention that besides the players and stuff, is the producer. Is really important because being a studio guitar player, you have to learn to work with all different kinds of producers and keep an even temperament. There's some guys that hire you to come in there and they want what you have to offer, and they'll let you play whatever you want. And there's other guys that really just want you to be the vehicle for their ideas and their thoughts, and they might dictate every single lick you play.
Right.
And then they might make you play it 30 times until you play it the way that they hear it. And the 30th one, you might not know what you did different than the first one, but if they go, that's it, you go, okay, that's it. If you like it, I'm happy, And so you learn to deal with all sorts of different temperaments of producers, and it's all good. It's all. I mean, I enjoy going in and having somebody tell me every little thing to play, and then listening back to it, and then going, wow, that sounds really good. He had great ideas, and it was a lot of fun, and it's stuff I would have never thought of. It gets me out of my box, of ideas. I learned something new.
Yeah. Uh, it's interesting talking about producers because Michael Thompson had mentioned that when he was doing a lot of these dates, doing the big pop in the 90s and beyond, the big pop dates where it's a female vocalist and he's working with David Foster, he just intuitively knew, okay, I'm just going to I know to lay out until after the first verse, and then I might start creeping in.
Oh yeah, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Because they want to, it's kind of like a small 3-minute film. They want to kind of
Yeah.
unveil this thing
Mm-hmm.
with the vocal
Mm-hmm.
sitting at the apex of
Right.
supporting
Mm-hmm.
it and
Mm-hmm.
just lay out until, that second verse comes in.
Yeah. Yeah.
I guess you develop this kind of short knowing how certain producers work and what, if you go into a session, you might know, okay, I'm probably going to be asked to,
Yeah.
play.
Right. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But it's
Exactly.
the variety that is the enjoyable part about it because you're always.
Yes, it definitely is. It definitely is. Yeah, that's another fun thing. And, in Nashville, a lot of times, especially on demo sessions, you might play 3 or 4 different styles, cut 5 songs, and one of them be a, shuffle of some kind, another be a Stone sounding song, another be a country song. It's just, you cut a bunch of different stuff. So it's fun. It does keep it fresh.
Yeah. Uh, After the Garth Brooks residency, what do you have coming up in 2024?
Well, we got another 36 shows out here at Caesars. So
Nice.
yeah, he's doing 24 also. So that's the main thing I'm looking forward to. Doing other sessions. I do still do sessions around Nashville, and then I do some work at home. Just about everybody has a home Pro Tools
Oh yeah.
rig, and
Right.
have a fun producer over in, well, he's a Danish, but he lives in Italy, named Soren Bungard, that I've worked with for 25 years, and he sends me a lot of things, to a lot of projects to record on, and different people around the country, so that's fun too.
That's awesome. Yeah,
Mhm.
it would be cool at some point with this channel to evolve into doing some stopping by folks' studios just to kind of get like a rig rundown, but from a home studio perspective.
Yeah. Mine is very basic. It's just a bedroom, a very messy bedroom, but I've gotten to where I can get really good sounds out of it, acoustic and electric sounds. So it makes it a lot of fun.
Oh, awesome.
Mm-hmm.
Man, this has been tremendous. I've been a fan for quite a while, and you're very generous with your time and had a heck of a great time talking to you. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you so much for your interest. I mean, I really appreciate it.
Thank you for tuning in to the Guitar Hang Podcast, interviews with noteworthy guitar players from around the world. Go ahead and hit the subscribe button and ring the bell for notifications to stay updated on our latest episodes.